Hello and welcome to Divorce Literacy. I'm your host, Alex Sanchez, and I have the privilege of hosting a dear friend and colleague, Jaime Berger. Jaime, how are you today?
I am good. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you for being here. And I wanted to spotlight you because as I mentioned to you, your firm is the one that's always on social media and definitely pushing the content. And it's not only pushing the content, but valuable information that you always provide. And that's the reason why I wanted to spotlight you, Jaime. Jaime, tell me a little bit about you and who Jaime Berger is, and a little bit about your practice and how long you've been in the field of family law.
Absolutely. And I appreciate that. It's really important for my partner, Sarah, and I to sort of get out valuable information. We know the process is hard for people. It can be very challenging. And so to make sure that that information is digestible and it's, real talk versus, lawyer speak, like that has been a real focus for us in the past few years. And I think it's really helped our clients. So I started practicing family law right away. I clerked for a wonderful judge. I caught the bug. I will actually say I probably caught it in law school. I've always just had a passion for the area. It's I think for me, the real human touch, the ability to help people who are going through a challenging time, but also that nothing is the same. Every case is different, and it's you get to experience kind of the nuances of each case, and that was always something that I really appreciated. So I clerked, I loved it. And then I went to a large family law practice. I actually met my partner, Sarah, when we were both practicing at large firms. We ultimately reconnected later in our career. She had gone out and started a firm with another partner. I joined them in 2012. And then we became partners in 2014, the three of us. And then Sarah and I became our partnership in 2015. And it's been an incredible experience to grow our practice and see, that we can help people in the manner in which we really want to help them by practicing the way that we feel passionately about. So it's been a really incredible journey so far, and I look forward to the next stages of it.
Okay, your firm has been going since 2015, 8 years, and you're in Morris County, right? Morris
Yes.
County.
Yep. We practice I would say the majority of our cases are probably Morris County cases, but we do practice statewide, as most family lawyers do. It's not necessarily county specific, but the nice thing is that we're actually a stone's throw from the courthouse, our office. So we get to see the judges walking out for lunch and, say hi, judge. And so that definitely helps. But we do really practice statewide.
I mean, what advice would you give someone that's entertaining or entertaining the thought of divorce, or maybe they're starting to get some information in regards to divorce? What kind of advice would you give that individual?
Um, you know, Listen, everybody's different, but I think the most important thing that somebody can do early in the process is to educate themselves. Try to understand the process, try to understand, some of the family finances. I think, with knowledge comes power, and I think a lot of times it's seeing people in those early stages who are feeling insecure with, maybe they weren't handling the family budget, maybe they weren't handling the family finances. So sort of kind of my goal always in those initial stages is to give them information, because with information, you can make informed decisions. And so without having that, it tends to lead to just increased insecurity. So I always say to people early on, if you don't know it, it's okay. Take a breath. We'll figure it out. All of this is information that you will have access to ultimately. But I think just kind of getting that initial panic out of the way and resetting the this is a process. It's going to take a little bit of time, and as long as the client understands that at the outset, it really does seem to sway a lot of that stress that people are feeling.
And what kind of criteria or qualities should an individual look for in an attorney before acquiring their services?
I get this question a lot, actually, and I appreciate it. I think, one is you should have an attorney that listens to you.
Yeah.
I think oftentimes, and what I experience a lot when I have a strategic planning session with a client who's met with other attorneys, is they feel like they're being, talked to or talked down to, or, made to feel like the attorney only cared to get out all of the legal jargon that they needed to in that initial consult. And that's not really what it's about. So I think having an attorney who listens to you and understands what your goals and objectives are, sets reasonable expectations. I think any attorney that tells you they can get you the moon and the stars and the sun, from the outset without knowing any information is probably not the attorney that you should hire. But setting reasonable expectations and giving a client an understanding early on in what the process is and isn't is really helpful. The other thing is, you want to make sure that you connect one-on-one. It's an emotional time for people. They're going through this really tumultuous time in their relationship. And if you want to be able to have that rapport with your attorney, that you can talk to them and not feel like you're, maybe continuing in a toxic relationship that you're trying to get yourself out of. But also, you're not treating your attorney like a therapist either. There's a balance there. But I think as long as you have those early stage conversations with a client and they understand that, my goal and objective is to always make the process easy for them or easier for them. It's never going to be devoid of stress. Our mantra is to de-stress the divorce process, but it's stressful. And as long as that initial expectation is set, I think those are the things that you really want to look critically for when you talk to an attorney.
Yeah, going through my own divorce years ago, I remember, obviously you have loved ones, friends, and, that worry about you and they want the best for you. And, they're giving you their advice, kind of like legal advice, and I remember that actually in my situation that actually prolonged my divorce process. And what advice do you have for someone that's going through divorce? And, obviously there's loved ones involved and, you're like you mentioned that you're going through a lot of emotional stress, and now you're put in a position where not only you have to decide, what, should you listen to your attorney or not, but also, should you, now you're put in the pilot seat where you have to make decisions financially or what advice would you have with someone like that that's, getting all this advice from anyone but their attorneys?
And it happens a lot. And I always say to people, it's always well-intentioned, it's always well-intentioned. People want to help. And it's not, it does sometimes frustrate the process because it, again, as well-intentioned as it may be, it may not be within the bounds of what the law will allow, or, and no two divorces are exactly the same. No two set of facts are exactly the same. So I always say to people, what happened to your friend's sister's cousin isn't necessarily the same thing that's going to happen to you. And while they want to give you the help and support, communicate with your attorney really, and make sure, if you have questions, well, I heard this, or this came from, this trusted resource, communicate that and make sure that you're having that conversation with your attorney so that they can say, yes, this makes sense because your fact pattern is similar, or no, that's not necessarily going to apply to you and here's why. But I think a lot of times, what happens is, and I see it, attorneys get frustrated when somebody's, it appears like somebody is challenging, what they're telling them. And that's not the way the attorney-client relationship should be. My goal is always to say, I'm going to give you the best possible advice that I can, but in the end, it's the client's choice. If they want to take a particular direction that is, not what I would necessarily recommend to them, I'm going to tell them why I don't recommend it, but they have the freedom of choice in the process, as long as it's not something that is, illegal or anything like that. Their choices are their choices. So you have to be mindful that you're empowering somebody throughout the process to make informed decisions for themselves and weed through some of the noise that's coming from outside sources and make sure that they're, focusing on what needs to be done to move the case forward.
No, absolutely. And what a lot of individuals that are going through divorce or looking to get divorced, they forget that laws change every year, so you could have had a family member that was divorced 5 years ago and he was entitled to this or she was entitled to that, and may not apply in your case. Like you mentioned, each divorce is unique in its own way. So you're never going to have two cases with the same outcomes. That's never going to happen. Never going to happen.
Nope. No, and the laws change, and exactly, the facts are just never identical. It's one of the reasons that I love what I do so much, because you get all of these different aspects of a case, and you get to learn and creatively argue why the law applies to one set of facts versus another. But it really is different in every single case. So it's hard to there are things that a judge will decide very succinctly within a certain box. But as attorneys, we do have the ability to kind of be creative in how we craft settlements. And I'm a certified mediator, so how I mediate cases. There's a level of creativity that we can use in addressing a settlement that won't necessarily come if you litigate a matter in court.
And James, just for the public, what's the difference between an attorney and mediator? Like what's why don't you elaborate a little bit on that?
So a lot of attorneys are mediators. Like in my case, I'm a qualified mediator in New Jersey, which means that I went through a particular training program that allows me to be a qualified mediator. But in the process of mediation, I sort of take off my lawyer hat, because I'm not a lawyer in the room. I'm a neutral third party. So I'm not advocating for anybody's interests. I'm not asserting that, one party has a greater entitlement to a particular position than another. I'm really there to try to facilitate a settlement. And in doing so, I really act as a neutral third party. So I may say something to my mediation clients like, well, a judge would decide a particular issue similar to yours in the following way, but I'm not going to take the position, well, what you're offering is reasonable, unreasonable, and should be accepted by the other side. So it's really just a very different aspect of my practice, because I'm not an advocate. Whereas when I'm representing a client, either in litigation or trying to resolve their matter, I'm advocating for their best interest, which I don't do in mediation. So I always recommend that my mediation clients have separate counsel to review any kind of settlement terms that we may come to in mediation, because again, I'm acting truly as a neutral third party.
Right. And folks, I'm including Jamie's link to Jamie's website below this video, so please reach out to her and take advantage of the ebook that Jamie offers. By the way, Jamie, I subscribed to this email and I downloaded it myself, and I encourage everyone to definitely do so and reach out to Jamie. One of the things that I want you to talk about is the ebook is actually titled "The Ultimate Guide to Divorce in New Jersey," and in there, Jamie, you speak about the do's and don'ts of dating during a divorce, and I thought that was amazing. I'm like, no one really speaks about this. Elaborate a little bit on that. That's amazing.
Absolutely. And we really took a lot of time and care in putting this guide together, because we think it's meaningful and it addresses the issues that people are really going through when they're in the midst of a divorce. Because, of course we can't speak to everything, but we took stock, what are the questions that we get asked most often? How can we help people, by downloading this guide? How can we help them to kind of weed through the process and try to, hone in on the questions that they really want answers to? Dating in divorce is complicated, as are a lot of other issues in divorce. But, specifically when you're introducing a third party that you're in a relationship with, during the divorce process and even after, it gets complex. There's a lot of emotion involved. And so, the do's and don'ts list, while somewhat, we're using that common sense approach, it's easy in the moment to sort of lose sight of that when you're going through a divorce. And I want to introduce the kids to my significant other because I'm in this new exciting relationship. Well, there's a way to do that that's mindful of their best interest versus, focusing on your relationship with your, soon-to-be ex-spouse and that interplay versus what's really best for the kids. So those were sort of that was the mentality when we were coming up with that content, because we think it's important and we get asked these questions all the time. So being able to, again, put it into a digestible guide for our clients, we've gotten a lot of really good feedback on that. So I'm glad that you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed making it.
And I definitely, folks, I recommend you download that ebook. And as Jamie mentioned, knowledge, education is power. And I feel that that's going to put you on the right track to definitely have the confidence to reach out to Jamie and at a minimum, just set up a consultation with her and her firm. But what's the process, Jamie, to for someone to reach out to you and guide me through what's that process entail?
So we do what's called a strategic planning session, and we call it that very purposefully because it really is planning. It's, where are you now? What are your goals and objectives? Where do you want to be? And like, what is the actual plan? We come up with a roadmap during that initial meeting. Excellent. Of, how the process can help to facilitate getting you there. So the process for scheduling one of those is you would reach out to our office by phone. You can contact us through our website, and we have a wonderful client intake specialist who takes some information. We run our requisite conflict checks because we have to do that legally on our end. And then we set you up for a consultation with either me or another attorney in our office. And those SPSs, are strategic planning sessions, are about an hour and a half. And we really devote time to listening to the client and understanding. And at the end, we'll talk about the plan moving forward, including, if the client wants to retain us, what that looks like. So it's an in-depth analysis of the issues in your case. And we want to make sure that you leave there with an understanding of what the process looks like going forward.
That's great. And let's say after an hour, you said it's an hour and a half, your consultation, and from there, do you recommend for them to bring anything to the meeting as far as like any financials, documentation, or should they just bring them and their situation that they're dealing with?
So whenever a client or potential client calls the office, we like I said, our client intake specialist goes through an analysis with them, asks some relevant questions, and then they get a follow-up email, and we ask for them to provide any documents that they think are relevant in advance, and we give them sort of examples of what we mean by that. And then they either email them to us in advance so we can review them before the consultation, or they'll bring them with them sometimes. So we make sure, if they email them in advance, we do our absolute best to make sure we've reviewed that in advance of the consultation so that we have that information at the ready and can talk about it with them. But sure, the more information you can have, the greater sense that you have on the financials, that certainly helps those early stage conversations to make sure that we're talking substantively and not conceptually. One thing I will always say to a client during a consult, because I get asked a lot of questions regularly, and it's, what am I entitled to with respect to child support, alimony, equitable distribution? And I always say, I don't necessarily know as I sit here today, because I don't have all the facts. And I caution you, if you're sitting with an attorney and they're telling you, hard and fast numbers, and here's what you're going to get, and this is what you're going to see, it is not good advice, because you don't have all the information in those early conversations. I then tell people, we will have those substantive conversations as we go, as we get information, so that you are making informed decisions.
Excellent advice. And I agree with you 100%. And that's why I asked that question, because basically when someone is meeting with you for the consultation, it's pretty much, you kind of have a brief understanding of what they're dealing with, and that you've already looked at their financial situation. So financial documents is always a key component of understanding the game plan, where you are and where you need to be moving forward. Jamie, is there a life after divorce?
There is. It's really, I see sort of people in this like tunnel when they come and they don't see it. And I assure them of it, and they still don't believe it. And they, and I could tell them, 6 ways to Sunday, how many times I've seen it happen, and they still don't believe it until they believe it, until they see it for themselves. But I assure you that there is. And, I really think, it's the reason that I do what I do. And it's the reason that the people in my firm do what they do, because we really feel like we're helping people to live their best life moving forward. Not every couple that marries, when they marry, should stay married forever, even when there's kids involved. You could be wonderful co-parents and not necessarily wonderful spouses. And so there's a distinction there. And I see the other side of it from my clients. I get the reports, we stay in touch with clients. I get I'm in this new relationship and it's so great. And, you said it would happen and I didn't believe you. And it, that really, it's a wonderful it's a wonderful outcome in cases where you can kind of, you see the light for the client when it happens, and it really is, it's something that I'm always so happy to hear about.
And that actually leads me to my next question: is what memorable case, with all the cases you have, have you had any memorable ones that actually had an impact, a big impact on you?
Oh my God, there's been so many.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple that come to mind. I think the first trial that I conducted, I think for me as an attorney was very memorable, because it's conducting a trial on your own, and being entrusted with the future of a client to do that, and making sure that you're as prepared as you could ever be for anything in your entire life, because you understand the gravity and the weight of what you're trying. In that particular case, it was a custody case, and so I understood the gravity and the weight of what was happening. And so for me personally as an attorney, I think that's one that sticks out. Probably the majority of cases, are ones where there's kids involved, and those are the ones that really resonate with me, because that you're doing something meaningful for a family. Obviously money and finances and making sure that people have what they need moving forward, but when the kids are involved, that's probably the ones that stick out the most in my brain.
Yeah. And by the way, folks, we're not advocates of divorce here. We're not pushing for people to get divorced. So Jamie, what advice do you have for that young couple that are looking to walk down that aisle and tie the knot? What advice? Because at the bottom line, Jamie, is when you get married, they don't give you all these laws and guidelines and regulations and this and that, and you're only entitled to this. But unfortunately, when you get a divorce, that's where you get hit with all the the this and that and that. So what advice do you have for a young couple that's looking to walk down that aisle?
I mean, you're asking a lawyer if what advice I have, but I think one of the things that you just said is important. I always say to people, my business is not breaking up happy marriages. That's never what I want. I'm a happily married divorce attorney. I love love. I love relationships. It's helping people when they've gotten to the point where that relationship is irretrievably broken. That's where I come in. But there's many times where I'll meet with a client and I'll say to them, I don't think you're ready. I think you need to, maybe talk to a therapist or a marriage counselor or somebody that can really help you with this phase of it, because
Amazing.
I don't hear in what you're saying that you're ready to make this monumental decision. And with young couples, certainly if the situation calls for it, prenuptial agreements are always a way to protect yourself. But I think more importantly, having those tough conversations early in a relationship, talk about financial objectives, talk about, what's going to happen when you have kids, is one party going to take a step back from their career, so that those aren't surprises. Do you want kids? How many kids do you want? Are you, how do you want to raise your kids? What's your parenting style? I mean, having those conversations early on, I think leads to a lot less divorce ultimately, because you've tackled the hard stuff. It's harder in the moment when these huge life changes are happening to address it in real time, because you're pulled in many different directions. You've got competing priorities, you've got work, you've got family. And so a lot of times the couple tends to be the last priority. And so that if you have those conversations early on, I think it really does help.
And one thing I want to emphasize what Jamie said is finances, because as you know, Jamie, the big percentage of divorces, the cost for divorces are financial stress. And, I agree with Jamie, definitely speak about finances, because a lot of couples, they want to walk down that aisle, but they really don't know what's on the other, what's the financial situation of their spouse, So sometimes you can, you can have great credit and now you're married into bad credit, and stuff like that has to be addressed before, tying the knot and moving forward, and I think that's great advice that you're giving there. Jamie, what? Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, the other thing I just want to add is what I do is very specific in terms of, when, I do a lot of prenuptial agreements. I mediate cases, I do divorce work, but I think also involving other professionals who are familiar with this sphere is really important. Meet with a financial advisor, make sure that you're connecting with people who are in their lane, experts at what they do. And a lot of times, a lot of the process for me is making sure that my divorcing clients, I'm setting them up with people who can help them move forward. I can help in my lane, and then there's other people that can help in other lanes.
And that's and that's the reason why I wanted to spotlight you, Jamie, because folks, Jamie's firm comes with has a divorce team, not only of divorce attorneys, but also she works with financial planners, accountants, CPAs, divorce lenders. I mean, so she's the pretty much the total package, So you need advice with this, she has a team, the sources that she can definitely recommend, and that's the reason why Jamie's firm is so successful. Jamie, on that note, what makes a successful divorce in your opinion?
That's a loaded question. I think a successful divorce is one where both parties, leave having compromised something, but not compromised everything, and where they feel on even footing as much as is possible during the process, and they're collaborative and they're amicable and open-minded about, creative settlement solutions, where they put the needs of the kids first if there are kids involved, where they're not looking to, war the roses, divide the room and everything in it, down to the forks and spoons. Those cases, I always say, the only people that win in that scenario are the attorneys involved who are getting paid. So if you can really approach the situation from the perspective, I may not want to be with this person anymore, but, destroying everything in my path isn't necessarily going to lead me to the outcome that I'm looking for.
Absolutely. Folks, please reach out to Jamie. As I mentioned, I'm going to put a link to her website below this video. Please reach out to her at a minimum. Set up a consultation with her and her firm and get the advice that's needed in order to move forward with a divorce. Jamie, any final thoughts that you can leave us with?
No, I really appreciate you having me on. It's, I love talking about what I do. So, any opportunity to do that is great. And any opportunity to see you is wonderful. So again, I really appreciate it. And if there's any way that me or my firm can help you, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Excellent. And we can definitely see the passion. Jamie, thank you so much for being here. And I look forward to continuing working with you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.